The science of control. Governments and corporations devote massive amounts of money and resources in order to control, manipulate, and shape the minds of people. Artificial creations such as laws, signs, contracts, borders, oaths are meant to indoctrinate, subvert, control, monetize, manipulate, and dominate the human soul. Human beings by their very nature are benevolent and kind, as can be seen in children. If two kids are playing, they seldom pay mind to race or creed or religion. However, when influenced by factionalism or identity politics, human beings fall prey to ideology and end up joining a human group, similar to a gang. Humans throughout the world vary in size, shape, color, belief, ideas, culture, and so much more, but in those differences, the human experience is similar, as feeling, experience, ideation, creation, emotion are essential to our humanity. Nobody on the planet except for a minority of socially inept individuals wants to commit a crime, violence, or any form of pain or trauma to another being. The global political, social, and economic system are not some intangible supercreation of human genius, but a physical reflection of our collective consciousness and desire to connect with other humans. Who delivers the mail? Who does surgeries? Who fights the wars? It's all average, normal, regular, everyday people who come together for a cause, something they enjoy or believe in. If you took 4 men in their early 20s and stuck them on a street in New York City with M16s outside of a Jeep in basketball shorts and t-shirts directing traffic, it would seem extremely odd. But if they have all the same clothes, such as a uniform, have a similar haircut, the Jeep has some decals and flags and is painted olive green, it now all of a sudden becomes an official force. If you walk into a building and a small little 4x4-inch plastic engraved sign says authorized personnel only, an invisible do not enter or restricted barrier now is placed in your mind. If lights are red, you stop. If they're green, you go. You indicate here and drive at this speed here because numbers on a sign and lines on a road say so. Governments don't control people. People control themselves. Essentially, modern humans are a commodity or asset like livestock. But instead of being fed, housed, and cared for by farmers and shepherds, or in this example, governments, we feed ourselves, provide for ourselves, rear our own offspring, and give the big tax man his benefit for existing in his land. Governments are known historically for thousands of years to commit black operations, false flag operations, and more to justify political and economic gain, as well as to justify starting wars. Examples historically can be seen in the Gulf of Tonkin incident, Operation Northwoods, and the Levant affair. Now, who do we blame? Governments and militaries and secret societies are experts at creating fronts. A front is when you engage in a covert transaction or action via proxy. This would be equivalent to a king of a country or a billionaire assigning a trust or bank account to an individual such as a friend, family member, or a mandated person in order to complete a transaction or action for him. Why would they do this? To avoid accountability, of course. And if you knew this, billionaire owned this company doing vaccine trials on poor villagers in a third world country, you wouldn't invest in their company or use their products anymore. If you knew politicians and governments were using your money to fluff up their kids' pension funds and sell you out to some foreign power, you would revolt and overthrow them. So a front is essentially a patsy or a fall guy who that if something criminal or scandalous were to be discovered, there would be no liability for the person behind the scenes, and that's why limited liability corporations, offshore structures, and trusts exist. These may be justified as for tax or privacy purposes, but one might ask, why all of these smoke and mirrors and hiding behind curtains? Where's the proof? 2 prime examples can be seen in offshore banking leaks such as the Panama Papers and the Epstein Island case. Both clearly show and highlight that not only do politicians, celebrities, and the ultra-rich stash money and engage in highly illegal activities overseas, but they are almost immune to any repercussions when these activities get leaked or become mainstream knowledge. How and why are they immune? Because they spend billions on divisive propaganda, entertainment like sports and media, fashion trends, food trends, just to distract and deflect. One might ask, what is a country? What is a government? Who makes the system run? What are flags and borders but a set of ideals to spur nationalistic pride and exploitation of a human longing for connection? What are wars and coups but attempts to implement a colonial agenda and exert domination and hegemony over the land, people, and resources of another race or tribe of human? What is money and wealth but metal and paper with the faces of the cruelest, most manipulative, egotistical, and greedy? What are wages? Who determines price, cost, ownership, the most forceful, and the ones who respect the law the least? Governments have no money. They take ours and redistribute it. They spend all of the money and request a larger budget next year and print paper out of thin air and ascribe a value to it. They're the equivalent of the spoiled trust fund kid who sits on the couch while you and your friends do all the work, but he'll happily scold you, tell you what to do, and feels that This is his contribution to the universe. Don't forget, they can legally commit violence, tell you what or what not to do, and completely nullify your human rights at any moment. The reason police arrest citizens and don't arrest government officials is because governments take our tax money, hold it, and pay the cops with it. Same for the army and all government services. So governments literally turn people against each other, and people will happily throw their own under the bus for a steady paycheck and the reputation of working in a prestigious job like the government. If governments really control everything, why does lobbying exist? Why do political parties need funding super PACs? Why do they request so much money? Because they're able to be bought and sold. If one person represents 10,000 people in a small county in America, it's easier to buy him off in the case of a corporation or a sovereign than it is to win over or influence the entire region. The system is built in order to allow for discreet corruption in the form of lobbying. Politicians have no power and are more of a figurehead for private money cartels such as the Federal Reserve or other banking syndicates. Through fractional reserve banking and quantitative easing, these central banks and government officials who answer to private groups and entities are fronts for a faceless corporate regime of historically influential families who rose to power through genocide, colonialism, and conspiracy. Oh yeah, they hide their money in made-up corporations with no liability and no tax. Who's running these governments? How are they run? For example, in Canada, all of the land is still owned by a trust that is owned by the Crown of the UK. Ontario is run by the Lieutenant Governor of Ontario, who serves as a front to the British Crown. Washington, D.C. is owned by a government entity which was incorporated through the District of Columbia Organic Act of 1871. 99.99% normal, innocent people who wake up day to day and want to contribute to the greater good. So continue to educate yourself, follow objective morality, and help those around you. What can we really do to create change? Unfortunately, there is not much we can do without a concerted effort from humanity as a collective. If a small minority, for example, refuses to pay taxes, they'll be arrested one by one. But if everyone does it, including the government and law enforcement workers, then these malevolent groups who are born into wealth would have no choice but to concede to our demands. I cannot stress this enough. This should be implemented peacefully, as governments will use any opportunity to plant agent provocateurs to make a genuine movement look violent or evil so that they can enforce a crackdown. The only exception should be if the government resorts to violence, then the people should resist proportionally. If we stop purchasing goods and services they produce, that would create a huge impact. Another way would be if people just stopped going to work, put in less effort, focus less on productivity. The average worker rarely reaps what they sow in compensation as government budgets and corporate profits hit unprecedented levels. A government is a gang with insignias, symbols, uniforms, but at the end of the day, it's a giant Ponzi or pyramid scheme that uses threat of abuse, imprisonment, and a vast array of hegemonic manipulation tactics to maintain itself. All one has to do is simply refuse their directives, reject their authority and legitimacy, and they'll fall like dominoes. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thank you for watching.